welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's great having you on. No, it's interesting actually, because when did I come across you on TikTok? When did you start doing
It's
the
a while
TikTok
back
stuff?
now, 6 months or so, I reckon. It was a while.
Seems longer than that.
Maybe it was longer. Maybe it was.
Yeah, I don't know. I just felt like I started coming across you guys, and then and then it's funny. It's funny how you get connected with people, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's funny when you have like obviously LinkedIn. Like I know everybody by their profile picture. So like that little profile picture is such, like, to me, it's so intrinsically linked to your brand. So I've not changed one in 5 years. Like in my profile picture, I'm about, 14 stone. I'm like a normal size. So when people meet me now, like, you're not the guy from your LinkedIn picture. Definitely not. But I recognize everyone from that. So I didn't first recognize you at first on LinkedIn and TikTok. I didn't put two and two together. I mean, I probably should have because of the name, but yeah, it must have been a while ago.
Yeah, it is funny. It's the whole thing of like, when you, well, obviously people have been meeting up a bit more now, but during COVID, when you had like a new starter, you'd get to know them for like 8 months, and you've never actually like met them at all, and then you meet them and they don't look anything like proportionally as well. I always get, because I'm quite short, so I always get, I thought you were like 6 foot, and I'm like, oh, sorry to disappoint you. I wish I was 6 foot.
Yeah. No, we had exact same scenario. Tom Bilton, who works for me, he joined us during COVID, and he lives in Wales. So like when I met him for the first time, it was really surreal. And like we're both quite short. We're both like 5'8" or so. But I always expect people to be much bigger in real life. So I was a bit like, oh, hello, mate. How are you? Yeah, it was really strange.
Yeah, it is really a funny
strange
one, but it's the world we live in, I suppose.
It is,
but yeah, mate, if you could just like, I suppose, give a little intro around, who you are, what you do, just for people who don't know who you are, and yeah, just take us through your journey, really, mate, just up until sort of present day.
Of course, man, of course. Well, I'm sure most people probably won't know who I am, but they might have seen a couple of annoying videos on LinkedIn and TikTok. But so I'm Will. So I the founder and MD of a company called OX7, and I've also got another recruitment agency called You Exclusive. So I've actually only been in recruitment for about 9 years in total. So not a massively long time, but kind of I started my working career like well early on. So I've always wanted to earn money. So I've always been really dead set on kind of having my own money and my own cash. So I used to clean my school. So I used to be a cleaner at my secondary school. So that's probably from like year 10 or 11. So like 14, 15, I would actually buff corridors. So I was a buffer guy. You see on like the American high school thingies, like someone going around the buffer. Well, I actually did that. I fucking loved it. So I started off doing that, and I used to clean like the teachers' lounge and stuff, and I used to nick drinks out their fridge. Like they'd have like loads of nice, like ice cold Diet Cokes, and I'd just be drinking those all the time.
Hang on a minute, how did you get this job though? How did that come about?
I don't know, actually. I fucking don't know, like, how I got this job. I must have just maybe asked someone, like, one of the cleaners, like, how do you get this job? And she's like, oh, you need to go talk to Pam down in the science block. And I was like, went and found Pam, and I was like, Pam, can I have a job, please? And she's like, well, can you buff? I was like, yeah, of course I can. Of course I can buff. 14-year-old me. Of course I can use a buffer machine. Don't worry about it. And then she said, okay, go do a science corridor and see how good you are. And I just basically said, just quickly showing me how this one works, because the normal buffer I use is a bit different to this one. And so she showed me, and it's easy. You just put a trigger down and just move it around like that. It's just a piece of piss. So I did that, and I did that throughout my GCSE years and the first part of sixth form. And then as soon as I could learn to drive, I sacked cleaning off. I was like, Pam, you've been great to me, love, but I'm going to shoot off now. I'm going to go get a proper job. So when I got a proper job at Burger King, which is actually one of the best jobs I've ever had, like 1,000,000%. I reckon one day I'll retire and go and work at Burger King, because it was just fucking fantastic. We used to be in one of the busiest Burger Kings in the country. So it was on the junction 10 of the M40 at Cherwell Valley. So like we would have coach loads of football fans coming in from London to going to Birmingham or Manchester or whatever, and it would just be ramo all the time. And I used to love working in the kitchen. I used to love making the burgers and doing the fries and then going on till and stuff. And all of my mates got jobs there, so there would genuinely be times where there'd be like 10 people on shift, and it'd just be us lot, just be me and the lads, kind of just working. So it was a real good laugh. So I did that all the way through sixth form, and actually that prevented me from going to university, because I was like, do you know what? I don't really want to go to uni. Like, I don't know why I would go, because I wasn't
Mm.
overly academic. I just wanted to kind of earn money and have a laugh. Like, that was good enough for me. And then, of course, it's free burgers every day, so that was a massive bonus. So I didn't go to university. I thought, fuck it, I'll stay at Burger King, and they put me through like a management training course. And so, bear in mind, I was like 18 years old, and they're like, look, you can now run this unit, and because you're showing a lot of potential, you can also go on a duty manager course for the whole of Moto. And I was like, what does that entail? Well, like, well, you're just in charge of like the entire site when the designate GMs and there. I was like, right. So what does that really mean? They're like, well, you're in charge. I was like, fucking hell. So I did it, and it was pretty horrendous, if I'm honest with you, because like as an 18-year-old, you were dealing with some pretty like crazy shit. So once we had a load of Millwall fans come down on a bus, and they stole 2 signs and took them onto their bus, right? So like 2 A-board signs, and they're like,
Right.
yeah, you have to go get those off a bus, mate. You're gonna have to go and get them from the fans. I was like, what? Like, wearing my Burger King uniform with my cap on, kind of going onto the Millwall bus then. Hello, chaps. Hope you're all well, and having a good day. Please, can I get that A-board sign back? Because if you don't, I'm gonna get sacked by my boss. Is that all right? So it was just a real kind of eye opener to like thrown in at the deep end, which was fine, which I love that. And so yeah, so I did that for like 2 or 3 years, and then I went into Phones for You once, the old phone shop, and I was buying a contract phone. So back in the days where they were literally begging to give you contract phones, and they would give anyone a phone. They're like, oh, you sound like you can kind of, you've got the gift of the gab. Have you ever thought about working in, in phone sales? I was like, no, I've not. Buzzing. And so I ended up going for an interview there. And in my interview, they genuinely did the whole sell me this pen. Here's a pen, sell me this pen. And,
Mm.
having never worked in sales before, I was full on like, well, it's a lovely Bic biro. The plastic is beautiful, and it will write for months and months, and it'll make your handwriting look really nice. I didn't know what to say. I was absolute chatting rubbish, but I ended up getting a job, and it was the most competitive retail sales environment like I've ever known, because in the shopping centre
Mm.
we was in, you had Phones You here, you had Vodafone, O2, EE, or Free as well, and then Carphone Warehouse, and all of that, all trying to sell people phones. So, like, literally, your job is when someone came in to inquire about a phone, you would not let them leave until they've bought a phone. So that was like mental. But I found it really easy. Like, I don't know whether I was really persuasive or for what, but like I could just sell every single person that came in a contract, and it would literally be like people would come in with their mates, right? And I'd be like, I would pretend so their mates come in to buy a contract phone, and I would like pick up the phone and like ring the talking clock, like the time sponsored by Accurus. I'd kind of be talking to people saying, oh, just a quick one, like your friend's just been approved for a contract phone as well. Like, did you know that? They're like, really? Yeah. And so I was a pretty I was taught the dark arts really of selling, basically. But it was really interesting. I really enjoyed it. And so anyway, then I was doing that for a while. Then the town I live in opened like this big call center, which was debt collection. So it's telephone debt collection. So people that owe debts to, funny enough, phone companies or insurance or credit cards, loans, whatever, like you would phone them up and say, oh, when are you going to pay it back, or what can we do? And that was like a not family run. Well, it kind of was a family run business, but it grew so quickly and so like rapidly. It was just an amazing place to work because it was such like a social environment. So I did that for like 2 and a bit years, and that was a pretty crazy job, right? Like, I would have people telling me every day, I'm going to come and wait outside the office and I'm going to kill you when you leave. I'm going to stab you.
Right.
I was kind of like, okay, cool, man. Yeah, I'm the guy wearing the blue jumper with the lanyard. If you see me, say hello. And like at the time, I didn't realize how scary it was. But people are saying, "Yeah, I'm going to burn your parents' house down and stuff." I was like, "Fucking hell!" Like, steady on, mate. You only owe 80 quid to MBNA. Like, chill out. So it was a pretty interesting job, but it taught me to like have empathy with people and actually treat people like human beings. Like these people, most people, don't really get into debt on purpose. Like it kind of is a necessity, and when it gets
Yeah.
out of hand, and something's happened in their life, which means they're not able to afford it anymore. Which was like you would listen to some real horror stories. Um, so I was kind of plodding along. It was a call center job. I loved it. So every Friday, everybody would go to the pub, everyone get drunk together. Then sometimes you do a Saturday together, and it was a laugh because you'd all be hammered and from the night before. But it was just a dead end job. Like I was never going to go anywhere doing that. It was paid shite money. And every time I was living next door to my parents in a house they owned, and I was refusing to pay rent because I was like, "Look, you had me." You gave birth to me, so therefore, why should I pay you rent? Again, as a dick. Um, so I was living rent free in a house of my own with all this like essentially pocket money to go and do whatever I wanted with. So, yeah, but then I was like, I need to actually get a career here. So I got introduced to this entrepreneur. So he's like a pharmaceutical entrepreneur, and my missus at the time, so my ex missus was his PA, and he's like had these three businesses that he was running by himself. He's like, I just need someone to come in and do it for me. So she's like, oh my god, my boyfriend would be perfect for this. You should meet him. And so I went and met him, and like I kind of put on a bit of a front. I wore my best suit. Went to Moss Bros and bought a lovely suit, and kind of just said to him. He said, look, these are my businesses. What would you do? And I was just thinking, right, what have I been taught to do? And I was like, oh, just sales. I said, oh, yeah, I'd go and sell to GSK or Allergan or all these people, and kind of, set me up quite nicely. He's like, oh, yeah, we want to, boost sales. And bear in mind, these are micro businesses. So these are mainly ideas like funded by him, but have like a data center in like Bangalore. So all these guys in India, right,
Mm.
who were creating these products, he needed someone to take them to market. So I basically went and did that and managed to blag that job, which for what I was capable of, it was like a massive leap of faith and jump into a deep end. So he he said, look, on my first says like just to let you know in 2 weeks' time, you're going to go to this conference full of like aesthetic practitioners, so basically like plastic surgeons and stuff. And I want you to talk about and sell our like not an ATS system, but like a CRM system. So that's somewhere where everybody's data would go, all the customers' data and all the patients' data. And I was like, oh, okay, wicked, like fucking hell, that's throwing me deep and big time. And so I did that, and I presented to a room of like 180 doctors. Like, I learned every slide by slide. I went through it all, like just knew it off by heart and performed it. I was nervous, but like I did it really well. I could see him at the back of a room looking really proud of me. I was like, oh mate, this is wicked. I was proper buzzing. So I presented it all, and then the fella who was like looking after it said, right, who's got some questions? Then all these fucking doctors' hands went up and they're asking me questions. I was like, I've not planned for the questions. I've got no idea what you're fucking asking me here. So I was kind of like, oh, I will come back to you on that one and let you know if that's okay. And I think the host must have taken pity on me because he's like, after two questions of me being like, fuck those, he's like, okay, what we'll do is you can meet him afterwards and do it. So yeah, so I did that for like 3 or 4 years. And during that time, I actually used a recruitment agency, to kind of staff a few of the businesses. I didn't really know how the model worked. I just knew that, I'd ring this guy up and he would send me someone to like be on reception or to, do some calls to me or whatever, and then send me an
Yeah.
invoice and would pay it, and that was it. But the job with the guy came to an end, and I went to the recruitment guy who I knew, and I was like, look, I need a job, mate. Can you help me find one? And he said, why don't you come and have a chat about doing recruitment? You've got sales experience, that could work quite nicely. So it was a husband and wife business, and I went in after work one day, and they kind of like, they pitched to me. They said, "This is what the business is." I said, "Guys, okay, I'm not actually going to leave this office until you give me the job. Like, you've sold me the dream. I ain't going anywhere until you let me work for you." So he obviously sold me all the great bits of recruitment, and he was right. He was right about
And
so
how old
much
were
of it.
you at this point when you first got into recruitment?
28, 29. So it's quite like later in life, really, compared to most. So I didn't go to university, so I didn't. I had a few GCSEs and I had a couple of A levels and an AS level as it was back then. But I went in quite late to life, so I kind of had a bit of life experience. Like, I understood, what debt was, what a mortgage was, and all this other stuff. So I wasn't going in completely like blind to all of that. Like, you see a lot of grads go in and you're like, look, you've got no life experience in recruitment. So it's going to be a lot more difficult for you to empathize with a guy who's thinking about leaving his job, but he's got his wife nagging at him, but he's got something secure, blah, blah, blah. Like, so yeah, I was relatively old going into recruitment at the time I did, but I was just like absolutely kind of hooked on it. Like, I just was like, oh my God, I talk to people all day about kind of interesting stuff. And I was a generalist, so I was an absolute kind of, work in lots of different markets. And I loved that. And,
Mm.
it was just getting to a time where generalist was a very dirty word. Like, if you need to be a specialist, you need to, knowledge an inch deep and a mile wide, all that kind of stuff, right? So I really enjoyed being a generalist, and had a really good kind of 2 or 3 years working for this company. And it was an industrial temps company, but wanted to do more perm stuff. So I came in and did their perm stuff, but I was also surrounded by the temp controllers, like essentially herding cats into, bookings and stuff, which was such a difficult job. Um, but then they sold the business to a large national. I can't remember the national it is now, but they're like, "Look, if you want to continue and do perm stuff here, you're going to need to go and work in the head office, which is in the centre of Northampton." Now, anyone who's been to Northampton knows it's a fucking shithole. It's horrible. I'd rather work in Beirut. It's terrible. So I was like, no, I don't want to do. I don't want to go there. Fuck that. So I ended up going to work for another agency who were based on the outskirts of Northampton, um, called Wallace Hind, who were so they are exec search and retained recruiters. And the training I had there by Matt Hogg, who was at the time a sales director but now is MD, was like the best training I've ever had on anything. Like, it was just absolutely. I was like, oh my God, like I thought I knew recruitment. After 2 years of like
Mm.
good billings and thinking I know it all, flipping heck. Like, he just absolutely rewired my brain on what quality recruitment is. And yes, I loved it. I loved working retained. I loved pitching retained, and I loved the whole candidate experience, like how important that was. It really kind of drove that home for me. Um, so that was going really well, and I just had my first daughter. Well, in fact, my only daughter. I just had Sienna, so she was like 3 months old, and my old MD came back to me saying, "Oh, dude, just to let you know, I've got a couple of investors who want to invest in me and start a business. Would you be interested in coming and doing it with me?" And I was like, "I'm really enjoying Wallace Hind. Like, it's brilliant. Like, I just don't want to leave anywhere. I just don't want to leave." And he's like, "I'll give you a 10 grand pay rise." I was like, "Yeah, okay, I'll do that. I'll fucking no problems at all." So I ended up leaving them and going off of him, kind of to try and start this kind of business, right? And these guys came from a hospitality background. They owned a group of hotels and day spas, and they essentially wanted to have an internal recruitment function, but then, but then also to create an agency, so it was kind of self sufficient. So that's what we were aiming to do. Now, probably did that for about a month or two, and it became very quick that they were like, the investment they wanted to give wasn't in line with what the business partner at the time wanted to do. So he was kind of like,
Mm.
"Look, we'll go set up on our own, and fuck the investment, we'll just do it organically." But then they approached me. They said, "Look, Will, we've worked with you now for like a month or two. We think you're fantastic. Would you be open to doing something which will maybe a little bit less investment, but it's yours?" I was like, "Yeah, go on then. Yeah, that sounds wicked." which obviously was a difficult decision because I felt like I was massively screwing over my old boss, and I really liked him and respected him. But for me at the time, it was perfect. So when I first started OX7, it wasn't like I'd like put loads of clients aside for ages and I had all this regular income. Like I'd literally
Yeah.
just been given the opportunity on a bit of a whim. So like I was having to start from literally nothing. So no clients, no regular billings, nothing at all. Just with some guy saying, "Look, we've got an office you can have on our business park, and we'll kind of fund whatever you need." And they're really bullish businessmen, so they're like, "Yeah, fucking grow as quickly as you want to." Whereas I was a bit like, "Look, guys, we need to do it slightly more sensibly. So let me get all the foundations in place, all the right processes, and then maybe I'll hire some people, and then we can kind of grow steadily." So that's what we did. I hired some people kind of about 3 months later, and excuse me, and then like we grew steadily. So like this was kind of 2018 time, so March 2018. I probably started OX7. First people joined in July 2018, and then we grew steadily to like 11 people so we were at 11 heads in 2020, so February 2020, and it kind of just COVID hit, and their business was hotels and day spas, and they closed overnight.
Right.
And they were just like, shit, we can't really be seen to support like a recruitment business. And they're like, also, we're not, no one knows what's going to happen with your business either. So like literally overnight it was like, look, all of that funding, which was essentially an overdraft, they essentially gave me an overdraft, um, that's gone. You owe a system amount of money. You've got 11 people to you know pay in what, 14 days. Thank you, kind of good luck. So yeah, kind of got to COVID and it fucked it up a little bit. But yeah, we had about 40 grand on the sales ledger, and amazingly, people paid. I didn't think a single person would pay, but every single person paid for invoice, and so I was like massively appreciative of that. But what I did is it cut the apron strings. So I used I could where we were part of a larger group. I had someone doing our finances. We had a marketing team to kind of help us do websites and socials and shit. So that all went very quickly. So it's kind of like, right,
Yeah.
I'm on my own 2 feet now, and I have to sort all my other stuff out. So I literally had like a baptism of fire of like, look, this is actually how you run a business. This is how you file a VAT return. This is how you pay HMRC. All of that other shit, which was taken, done after me. So like 2020 was like a rebirth for us, really. So we've kind of slowly grown back up again. But like my biggest ever fear is having to make people redundant or let people go. And obviously, I experienced that in COVID, like the worry until furlough was announced of having to do that. So I've always been ultra cautious when growing again, but we can do it sustainably and sensibly. So I know a lot of businesses grow and there's like hyper growth and whatnot, but I've tried to do it as sensibly as I possibly can. So I look after the people I've already got working for me, who've obviously dedicated a lot of their kind of time and resources, to making OX7 great. So yeah, I appreciate I've waffled there, so apologies. But yeah.
That's interesting, mate. It's interesting. So with regards to scaling, because a lot of recruitment companies get this wrong, right? So what's your process in terms of like actually deciding who you hire? Like, how do you identify the right person? Do you go for more junior people and train them up, or do you go for like mid or senior people who are ready made?
So it's interesting. So I've tried both ways, and I don't actually know which is the best way still. So I've tried to hire mid senior hires to come in who've got the knowledge, who can come in and deliver. And some of them have worked, some of them haven't. And I've tried juniors, who have no recruitment knowledge at all, but have maybe industry knowledge about something else, and trained them to do recruitment. And some of them have worked and some of them haven't. It's a really difficult. I don't think there's a right answer. We try and do it on the individual, on a particular person, because we're a smallish team who are quite close. And I think anyone who comes into it is difficult at first, because when you work with people day in, day out, like there's very close bonds, and it's difficult sometimes to penetrate that. So we've had, for example, Sammy, who's come in. So Sammy's the first girl in ages who we've employed, right? she had a bit of recruitment experience, but not a huge amount. And actually, she was trained really well by one of our competitors. So when she came in, like she just needed a little bit of rewiring. Like we polished a bit of like corporate professionalism out of her and made her a bit more kind of real. Um, I think that's a bit of a sweet spot for us. So someone who's already been trained, but just needs to have a bit of freedom to be allowed to do what they, you know, say what they want to say and kind of be themselves. Because we find a lot of companies who train people like train them to be ultra corporate and ultra kind of, you know, wear a suit and tie because that's what we should be doing. Whereas we're a bit more like, fucking hell, we're human beings. Let's just talk on a level. So I think our sweet
Mm.
spot is someone who's maybe had, I don't know, 6 to 12 months in recruitment, who kind of know how to get from A to B, but maybe needs a bit of kind of like refinement in doing so. I think that's a bit of a sweet spot for us.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It really is. I've personally, from my experience, I think I've actually seen more senior hires fail. Like the expensive exec
Mm.
search types who come in on double the salary everyone else is on.
Yeah, yeah. I've known a couple of people who've come in at like exec search level, big high basics, who have promised the world but not been able to replicate what they've had at another agency. And I can really get it, right? You know, you have legacy clients at another agency, clients who know you really well, and then come in somewhere else to try and kind of replicate that can be very difficult. So, yeah, I would say that's been our biggest kind of, mistakes of bringing people in who've been on very high basics, who probably don't necessarily need to earn commission and haven't necessarily been as motivated as people who want to earn a commission.
Yeah, here's a tricky one. So, what would you say? Obviously, you've already talked about like a couple of massive challenges. Did you go through any other massive challenges when setting up the business that maybe anyone else can learn from?
Do you know what? I'd love to say I had lots of challenges and it was really difficult, but I was really fortunate to have really understanding kind of investors and kind of seasoned business professionals around me to kind of advise. The mistake I made was I didn't listen enough. I didn't take enough interest. I was very blinkered into thinking all I should be doing is billing. All I should be doing is making money now, making money for tomorrow, making money for the next week. When actually, if I'd have probably taken a step back and said, actually, I'm going to sit with this finance director who's got 15 years of experience running multinational businesses and really understand my P&L and really understand the implications of some of the decisions I'm making financially. you know, I should have done that. I also should have, racked the brains and racked the networks of kind of the people who I was kind of who are investing in us. But all I was thinking about is all they want, all they care about, all they want to see is my billings or the billings of a business like this week, next week,
Mm.
and next month. Where actually, if you want to create a really sound and kind of secure business, you need to spend a little bit less time working in the business and more time working on it. And it's still a concept which I struggle with because I'm a biller, right? I'm a kind of a natural born biller. So taking a step back and saying, actually, I need to be thinking about how we're using our ATS or how we're utilizing all our tech stack to the best ability, or are we spending the money in the best way? Like I need to do more of that as opposed to picking up the phone, making 20 sales calls every single day. um, I think working on the business is far more important than working in the business, even when you're small.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of founders as well. They really struggle, like, even outside of recruitment. There's always that struggle with stepping away from the hands-on work. Like a lot of people struggle with it,
Yeah,
especially those who are like control freaky.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's a difficult one. I think I'd really struggle as well because I'm one of those people that likes to be like very very in control of things, and I like to know what's going on. And I've read quite a few books of I like what's his name, James Caan from Dragon's Den. So
Hmm.
I remember reading about him, and he was very very hands on, and then it got to a point where he had to hand it off to start doing other things. He really struggled with that transitional period. Um, And yeah, I think a lot of companies as well. They like. Did you realize that if you didn't start focusing on hands off stuff, that it would affect the growth?
It took me a while to realise because you get so wrapped up in consistently billing and like I've always wanted to be like super self sufficient, right? So when I kind of think about the business, I think, well, look, as long as I can cover all the costs, right, through my own billings, any costs or anything else that people make is going to be like a nice profit and bonus. But what you actually do is you forget that you should be coaching people, you should be leading people, and it stifles their growth and it stifles their development. So when you're just so obsessed with like your next deal and your next kind of job on or your next client on, you forget that Josh actually probably needs a bit of kind of support on BD, or Adam needs some help with how he's positioning his opportunities to clients. And you think actually, if I spent more time helping those guys, do more and get better, that's going to benefit the business far more than me just with my blinkers on, concentrating solely on billing. And I think it took me a long time to realize that. It took me a long time to think actually, the best thing I can do for this business is be a leader, trust and empower my the people who work with me, and really develop them as much as I can, so I can get to a point where I don't even need to think about building myself.
When you became stepped into like that leader shoes, have you found it like a natural step and transition for you? Like, do you feel like you're a natural born leader, a natural born manager, or did you struggle with that?
I'll be honest, mate. I do feel a little bit as I'm a natural born leader and a more a manager than more a leader than a manager. So like I've always been like captains of football teams and captains of cricket teams and whatnot, and like done all of that kind of stuff. So telling people what to do and getting people behind you has always been quite like not easy for me, but I've always managed to get people to buy into me. So that there wasn't a massive transition to get like into a leadership thing. The thing I've struggled with like is more the managing side, because managing and leadership like obviously two different skill sets. Managing is a lot harder for me because I don't like upsetting people. I don't like having those difficult conversations where you have to say to someone,
Mm.
you've done fuck all this week. What's going on, right? Because I fundamentally, it sounds a bit hippie-ish, I want people to be happy. I don't want to make people feel miserable. And if I'm telling someone, you've done nothing this week, it's embarrassing what's going on, that's going to make someone feel like utter shit. And they're going to go home, even if they are taking the piss, they're going to go home thinking, oh, fucking hell, I've had a right dressing down from my boss here. Whereas I always try and do it really constructively and try and do it in the sense that, look, mate, this is where you should be. Like, this is what I'm kind of expecting you to be like, and this is where you are. Like, what's going on? It's like I think my style is very much try and like rather than shout and KPIs and all that kind of stuff, is just to trust people and to say, look, this is what I think you should be doing, and allow them to arrive at conclusions themselves. And if they can't see that, they can't see where they should be and why they're not there, then it's probably a case of like we're probably not going to work out. So I specifically try and employ people who are switched on, who kind of know what they should be doing and know what to expect. So um, I've always tried or try to keep to a minimum the amount of conversations I have, which are either confrontational or like I know are going to make people feel like shit, which is not a great trait, I know. And a lot of people who I know in business are like, you're an idiot. You need to fucking be harsher. But I see it as failure on my part if I'm not getting the best out of someone. Like I will exhaust every single avenue, even if that means, months and months of no billings, because it's my duty to that person. When I took them on, I promised them I'd train them and I promised I'd get the best out of them. Like I have to really get to a stage where I'm like, we've tried everything here. I'm afraid you're gonna have to go. Like I won't do it really willy nilly. Like I won't be like, oh, you've not billed this month. Get your fucking jacket. See you later, mate. Like I will do everything I possibly can to make sure someone is performing to the best of their ability without being a complete fucking bastard about it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I did a personality thing like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. It's like a recruitment. management thing when I first became a recruitment manager, and one thing came up is that we were sort of looking at different areas of like personality and management style and stuff. And one thing that came up, I think, for me was I'm very similar to you in that I'm very coaching led, and we went through like the strengths and weaknesses of each one, but the coaching one was basically that you genuinely believe that like pretty much everyone can make it, and you can like eventually coach them to being good. So the trait of someone who's very coaching led and very coaching focused is that they hang on to people months too long, and they'll just basically keep people that should have been let go months ago. So it sounds like you're very similar to me in that regard.
I am completely. And that is a weakness which a lot of people have said. Oh, you know, like in most agencies, they would have probably, got rid of, lots of people many times where I haven't. But then I don't want to be like most agencies. I want to think of like stuff in terms of 12, 24, 36 months rather than, oh, you're having a bad quarter, fucking off your pop. Oh, I know you've just had a newborn baby, but I don't give a shit, mate. Whatever. I want to be like, I'm gonna trust you. I'm gonna develop you. I want to do, right by you. But please over time reciprocate that and fucking, stand by me. So I'm very much. I would take it as massive personal failure if I had to let someone go. I would say it's my fault. Like I would never say it's their fault. The only time I'd say that is if they weren't applying themselves. But I think we've created a culture where everybody does genuinely want to apply themselves, and they don't see it as like this annoying chore having to do BD or whatnot, because they see the end goal and they're like, I know this is how we get there. It's just a step in the process.
Yeah. With regards to like the setup, because obviously you talked a little bit about process there, but in regards to the setup, how are you guys set up? Are you all 360s, or do you have like a delivery team? Because the reason I ask is I know it's become more popular over the last few years to have, some companies have like 180, so they don't have any 360s. They just have people do BD, people deliver. And I never used to be a big fan of that as a 360 consultant, because I personally wouldn't be able to do it, going back to the whole control freaky thing. But I've actually, like, as a manager, I actually saw the value in it over the last few years, because having, even to like, have a team of 360s and then having a BD person to supplement the business coming in. I don't know. What do you think of that model, and how do you guys do it?
So we're all 360s, but I'm completely with you on actually 180 models might be better. So my view is, right, the person who takes the brief from the client should be the person who is searching for those candidates, right? So I think secondhand information, like in recruitment, like kills so much. Like it just makes life so much more difficult. So I do believe the person who is taking the brief should be the person going and finding those candidates. So that's what we do here. So like everybody here is full 360, and I don't think that suits everybody. Like I don't think anyone can go and do full 360. And actually, the people that do 360 well, I think are fucking brilliant. Like, and I love employing good 360 consultants because I love the fact they can go out, win business, and then go out and find a candidate, place them into a role. Jobs are good and they do the full process. Fantastic, right? But if I want to scale this business, which I do, I kind of accept you're probably going to have two sides. You're going to have the BD people whose skill set lies in going and winning new business, being tenacious, kind of following up, being, just fantastic with people. But then you're also going to need the people who can do the resourcing, which is a completely different skill set, who can spend the hours looking on LinkedIn or read or whatever and tweaking words, tweaking acronyms to find that very difficult to find person who can go and network with candidates, who's more than happy to go to like a network evening for I don't know, like a marketing meetup and be there and be the recruiter and say, oh, hi, I'm Will from OX7. I'm a recruiter, but I just want to get to know you guys. That's a completely different skill set. And it's very rare you get the BD and the kind of resource and skill set in one person, like, and you can get them because they do exist. But if I want to scale it and make it bigger, I need to have those two. I need to have those two sides, right? Those the people who can do the BD stuff really well, and people who can do the resourcing really well. Now we're not of a size yet where I can necessarily go and do that straight away. So we're building foundations at the moment. We're building processes, we're building presence, we're building brand. And bear in mind, we're 5 years old, so we're not a startup. We've not been around for 3 months. We've been around for a while, but I think we're still at the stage where we're like, right, we're going to do things properly. We're going to scale it, but in order to do that, we must have the right foundations in place. So that's what we're spending time doing. But I can see in 2, 3, 4 years time, but we're going to have a team of BD professionals and a team of resources kind of working in tandem and almost in like a buddy system. So that's why I think that's what we'll do.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting concept because there's so many different ways to do this. And look, I'm not a recruitment business owner. I can only talk from my experiences, working in an agency and then obviously becoming a manager in an agency and like running a small office. But I know there's way more that goes into it, but for me, like the more I've been involved in this industry, especially as look, the reality is, like you said, 360, like true 360 consultants, not 360 consultants, but true 360 consultants who could essentially just run their own business if they wanted to, and do really well, are so rare, so rare. I only realized this after a couple of years in the industry because I just thought a 360 consultant's a 360 consultant. But a lot of the times when you dig under, you dig into the details and you understand context around people's desks and stuff, especially when you're interviewing, a lot of the time, a 360 consultant who's billing, 250K a year on a perm desk sounds amazing. But then you find out actually, well, 80% of their clients were just handed to them. They'd win a client every 4 months to sort of maintain their 360 status. But, they weren't really that good at BD. They're more like, a 180 sourcer who is okay at BD, but gets sorted out a lot by the company. But then you've also got, sometimes you've got a 360 consultant who's shit hot at BD. And I said in a LinkedIn post the other day, could sell antiperspirant to Prince Andrew, but then a lot of their roles are just filled by their delivery consultants. So it's I think it's pretty hard to really understand who the 360s are, and I really do think that there's really not that many. I think I've worked at 4 or 5 different companies, and we're combining about 200 consultants there. I'd probably say I've worked with 4 or 5 really proper 360 consultants. So if you can get them, great, amazing. You're going to save loads of money on hiring 2 people as well. But the reality is, unless your training system's really good, the reality is that you're probably going to sort of end up with that 180 model anyway, in a way. But your people are just pretty much called 360s, aren't they?
Well, that's it. And you touch on something really interesting, man. And this is what we've seen so often, and things we've picked up in interviews of people who've inherited legacy clients. Don't get me wrong, well done, you've managed your account really well and you've grown it. But actually, the real skill is being self-sufficient, right? Being able to go, right, give me a laptop, give me a phone, give me internet connection, and I'll go and make you money. It's easy. And I genuinely believe I'm a 360 consultant, right? So I think if for whatever reason I packed OX7 in and I was like, fuck it, I want to go work for someone else, I could go to a business owner and say, look, just give me the infrastructure and I'll go and win clients and then I'll go and fill the role. I'll do it all myself. Like, that is the biggest skill set, and it is so rare. And we've interviewed people where, exactly like you say, you're like, okay, cool. So tell me about my clients. You'll go, oh, I've worked with them for like 5 years. Okay, how did that come about? Well, when my boss was leaving his desk, he kind of passed on to me, and then I've grown it. I was like, okay, cool. So you didn't actually win it. Or, tell me about where did you get those candidates from? Oh, they're just on my database. Oh, well, they're your candidates. Oh, no, they were just on there. Like, the ability to do everything from fresh is incredibly difficult, right? And in this obviously new world where we're going to embrace AI and stuff, that there's going to be far less of a requirement for people to do the absolute fresh stuff. Go and get a fresh new client and go get a fresh new candidate, because we'll utilize the data we have, on the databases far more effectively using AI. So it's going to make life easier, and it probably will mean that although you're a 360, you're probably like a souped up 360 on steroids, because you're using, AI to make your life easier. But at the moment, certainly, you're right. You don't get many people who are very good 360 consultants who can do it. You get a lot of people who are, glorified order takers who can, get an introduction to a client from a colleague, and then write down what they're looking for, and then go to market to try and find it. But there's a lot more skill in being full 360.
Here's a question for you, right? And I posted this on LinkedIn. I think I've posted it a couple of times this year. It always rustles some feathers, because everyone's got a different answer, and
Yeah,
the top billers they always they're responding the way you would expect. But what do you think actually makes, like, how would you class a good recruiter? So do you think it's just their billings? Do you think it's their CV to interview ratio? Do you think it's you know their recommendations they get because they're given a good experience? Is it, like you said, the ability to be a 360 and do the whole thing? Because I find it's almost impossible to judge. And the easiest thing to do, obviously, is just say, "Oh, who bills most?" But as we've just discussed, some of the best recruiters I've met were just didn't have the ambition, didn't have the drive. They just wanted to work a 9 to 5, earn 55K a year quite easily, bill 150K, very average in London, 150, and then just go home. But they were the better ones. They were way better than the 200 and 250K billers I know, but they just didn't have the drive. So how do you like judge people? Because it's not even just about the technical ability of actually being able to recruit or being able to win business or
yeah.
being able to account manage. It's so much more than that, isn't it? And it also, like, you have to take into consideration of, like, how driven are they, how ambitious. But is that unfair to judge them? Is it unfair to say you're not as good a recruiter as Will, because even though you're a better recruiter and you're better at BD and you're a fantastic salesman or whatever, Will works longer hours, so he makes up
Mm.
for that. He compensates for his lack of ability because he works harder. So I don't know, what in your opinion makes a good recruiter?
So, really good question, right? And different people will give you different answers here. So, the business owner, the recruitment business owner, and me, the answer for me is the person who bills the most money. Like, that for me makes them the best recruiter. But if you talk to my clients, I don't give a fuck how much they bill, mate. The less CVs they send me, and the more people I interview, the better. So the person with a better CV to interview ratio is going to be the better recruiter to that client. So there's different kind of perspectives on what makes someone good. Like, I think overall, you have to look at it like relatively holistically and think, right, okay, it's a combination of how much you're billing compared to how much you're doing, compared to like how much you're being paid, and like the work you're being put in. There's probably like a formula you can probably work out. But I think that the people who are genuinely the best recruiters are the people who are spoken about most favorably when they're not in the room. So, like the client who
Mm.
says, "Yeah, you need to talk to Will at OX7, or you need to talk to Kieran at U Exclusive," right? That's the best endorsement you can get of being a good recruiter, rather than some, clever marketing or recruitment campaign, like marketing campaign where they ram it down your throat that they're fucking headhunters and they do everything by the book and they do all this other shit. It's what people say about you when you're not there. That probably denotes what is actually someone who's very good at their job. Or, oh, well, you should talk to so and so. They gave me a fantastic experience. I loved working with them. They're great. Like that, I think really is the how you define a good recruiter. But like I say, for me, if you were to kind of if you were to say to me, look, rank the people who work, with you in kind of order of who's best, I almost guarantee you that best to worst would be who's billed the most and who's billed the least. But that's because I'm coming at it from a business owner's perspective, who's making the money. If you said to your clients, do you think they're good? And they said, yeah, because they don't send many CVs. Like, they don't give a shit how much someone bills. Like, they can care. They don't care if they work, 9 till 5 or they work 8 till 7. Like, they just want to get the best possible result for them. So I think it very much depends on who you talk to, and kind of whose perspective it comes from.
I think also, because I obviously don't know how you operate and whatever, but I think the culture and like the way you work in that company makes it a lot easier because you obviously have a smaller team. You're very careful around who you hire. From the sounds of it, it's all very like quality over quantity and etc. You probably work in like high quality jobs, so it seems like from what you're saying, it's probably a level playing field. But as we both know, in a lot of companies, it really isn't, because you've got. I worked in a company where there was £1 million biller who was only £1 million biller, not because he was that amazing. He's just been there 10 years. He got the job there when he was like 18, 19.
Yeah,
He's been in £1 million, and he's treated like a god. And
yeah,
then it sort of feeds into itself because he's treated like a god because he does £1 million, and because he does £1 million, he's treated like a god in that he's passed all
yeah,
the best business, he's passed all the best candidates.
yeah,
So it's I suppose in a level playing field at one company, where everyone's 360, you're right. Like, it probably is most of the time billers, and in the descending order. But you said something there as well, which sort of leads us onto a topic I really want to talk to you about. With regards to personal branding, you said in your opinion, what makes the best recruiter in a lot of instances is what people say about them when they're not in the room. You've obviously built a really good personal brand. You guys put out some really funny content, and it's not just your personal brand; it's like your actual company brand, which is obviously how we got talking in the first place. So, could you just talk us through how that came about, why you started creating content, your creative process, and the importance of building a personal brand nowadays?
yeah, of course, man. So, for me, right? So I'm inherently lazy. Okay, so I'm actually a very lazy human being. Like, believe it or not, I'm a very lazy human being. So I like taking the path of least resistance to everything I do. Right now, in recruitment, that pretty much means if you put a job out, you're just gonna have people come to you who want the job and who are qualified. And the way you do that is by having as many people, suitable, qualified people, seeing that opportunity, okay, seeing or being exposed to what you're working on. Therefore, they can contact you directly and say, yeah, I'm perfect. I'm a project manager. You're looking for a project manager. Happy days. Jobs are good and right. The way you do that is getting more eyes on your content, right? And from going on LinkedIn like today to what you would go on it 5 years ago, it's a fucking different platform. It's a completely and utterly different platform. And actually, it's a much better platform because people now are using it to showcase themselves as human beings, right? There's no there's a massive increase in people who are actually being really authentic and just talking about their life and stuff they've done, like they've got engaged, they've had a baby or whatever, right? I care about that kind of stuff far more than I care about the fact their company offers the best drainage systems in South Northamptonshire, right? I couldn't really give a shit about that kind of stuff. Like, you gravitate towards the person and the human being. So, like 5 years ago when we started at 7, I wanted to be known for being normal people, not being a corporate recruiter who wears a tie to work, who thinks that you should call everyone Sarah Madam, who just acts in a certain way, right? For me, we need to humanize ourselves because the perception of recruiters on the whole is pretty low. It's pretty bad. It's pretty shit because they think we're faceless people who only really care about getting commission, right? When, yes, of course, we want to make the deal happen and we want to earn money and earn commission. But actually, the layer kind of directly beneath that is we're good human beings. We want to make people happy. We want to do right by people. So we developed like a a strategy, like a marketing strategy or a personal brand strategy, where we were just ourselves, where we posted stuff that we found funny, that we felt like people who would like us would find funny, right? So that's kind of evolved to today, where we post, videos regularly of what's going on in the office, and it's almost like parodying like the industry. It's like holding a mirror up to the recruitment industry and saying, look, most of you dickheads are like this, right? And kind of people resonate with it, they understand it, and most people get the satire with it. Some don't, which is hilarious. We find that even funnier. But when we're creating content and when we're kind of putting stuff out there with a view to kind of building up our following, building up the amount of eyes that see when we put proper stuff out, like adverts, job adverts and stuff, like we don't do it to appease a certain like target audience. We don't say, right, we really want to make a bit of content that's going to appeal to sales directors in the Northwest, right? We don't do any of that. We think we're going to do it because we find it funny. Like, we find it funny. If you don't like it, fuck it, I don't care. Like, I'm not really that bothered. I'm not making it for you. 99% of the time, we're making it because we, as a company, find it really funny, right? So, which is why we've got Adam Woolard in. So Adam Woolard is AKA Shuffle T, battle rapper, writer, like genuinely a genius. Like, it's mental. It's actually mental that he's bothering giving us the time of day to do all of our content and all that kind of stuff, because he should be, and he will be soon, doing stuff for the BBC. He'll be like, writing sitcoms and everything, right? Because he's fucking brilliant. He genuinely is. So like he creates scripts and he creates stuff based on listening to all of us, us kind of 6-7 consultants talking about what's going on a daily basis, like perceiving what's frustrating, what's funny, what's not. Then he'll come and make these scripts and we'll perform them. Now it's a double-edged thing for me, right? Because actually recruitment's a bloody hard job, right? And you can spend 6-7 hours of rejection, of people talking to you like shit, like thinking you're a scumbag, and like you can think, fucking hell, this is rubbish. We then spend like probably half an hour to an hour a day coming together as a little group and performing these scripts together, like a little like workshop kind of thing, where we have a great time away from work. We don't even really think about work or whatever, performing these things together, laughing together, and forgetting that actually, we've just had 45 grand's worth of dropouts from last week. We just find, we just perform and stuff together and find it funny, right? The fact that we then put it online and other people find it funny as well is a bonus, really, because actually, the more people you have, like, and I always say to the guys, like, you build up, like, really, you only want like a hardcore of fans who like your stuff. Like the people who put posts out there of them wearing a bikini, doing a selfie, saying, live, life, laugh, whatever. Like, it's not sustainable. Like, the only reason that gets so much engagement is because LinkedIn is full of blokes mainly who are simping after these women, right? And I know it sounds horrible, but it's true. Like, you look at the comments, it's CD warehouse managers from Nuneaton saying, oh, great pick, babe, or whatever. So it works for them, but it doesn't work for fucking fat middle-aged blokes like me. Like, it's just completely different, right? So you want a core group of people who find your stuff entertaining, who find it funny. The more stuff you do, the more entertaining you are. You grow that core of people to it's bigger and bigger, who then share it, who like it, who comment on it, and therefore goes into people's like second networks and third networks, and it grows that way. So we never try and make content to make it appeal to a mass market or make it appeal to a specific demographic. We do it because we find it funny and we think it's good, and it kind of presents us as who we are, which is human beings who are self-aware and self-deprecating of what ridiculous industry we work in. Because recruitment is a ridiculous industry. I don't care what anyone else says. There's no way on God's green earth that someone like me with no qualifications, who wears, shorts and socks and sandals to work, should be earning, or billing as much as accountants, solicitors, lawyers, fucking all these proper people who have studied and have a very good
Proper
qualification to
jobs.
like proper jobs, mate. Proper people, proper jobs. Like we shouldn't be doing it. The fees we charge are astronomical, and they are ridiculous. Right? I'm not going to complain because it's helped me buy a house. You know, it's helped me pay off all my Mrs. Klarnas. Like it's been good for me, so I'm not going to complain. But we have to acknowledge that it is slightly ridiculous. And all of these people who are normally 65-year-old recruitment owners who are like, yeah, well, I've been doing this for 35 years. I've built up all this knowledge. You know, I should be earning, this fucking £8,000 an hour, to do my job. It's slightly ludicrous. Like we have to acknowledge that the job we do is difficult, yes, but we kind of need to be a bit self-aware of, like, we're very fortunate and very privileged to be able to charge the amounts of money we do to be a middle person, to introduce people. So that's like really all we do. We just say, hello, David, please meet John. Thank you very much. Here's your invoice. See you later, guys. Of course, there's more stuff to it than that. Fundamentally, we're introducing people who wouldn't have otherwise been introduced if we hadn't come along. And we have to acknowledge that charging the money we do for it is fucking mental. And I still do believe one day people will wake up and go, what? Why on earth were you paying £9,500 to be introduced to fucking John, who stayed with us for 12 months and fucked off somewhere else? Like, it's crazy. So, sorry, a little bit of a rant then. I know it's very counterintuitive given that I own 2 recruitment businesses, but I still do think it's crazy.
Well, actually, so this is really interesting. You ended that point with that, because I wanted to finish this off with getting your opinion on the future of recruitment, because I mean, you've probably seen a lot of my stuff, and I think there's fundamentally a lot of problems with the recruitment industry, not just in the UK, globally, just how it's run. And a lot of the high fees you're talking about, well, that's a knock on from the high fees agency have to pay to keep themselves alive. For software, LinkedIn Recruiter, for example, is extraordinary in its price. It's mental. But this is all sort of like how it all became so expensive, I suppose. And what's going to be really interesting is over the next 10 years, with everyone bagging on about AI, but for good reason, as long as the AI don't, make humans extinct, we'll still be going in 10 years or so. And what that's going to look like, like, where is AI going to plug in? Because it's obviously going to plug in. I mean, I've been utilizing automation tools, like AI automation tools, quite recently, actually, and it's been a game changer, to be honest with you. And they're cheap as well, like, considering like automation tool or hiring an SDR on a salary. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. But like, where do you see it happening? Do you see AI completely taking over and then the recruiter's job completely changing? Do you see it not changing that much? It's just that AI is going to sort of take over the boring stuff, which means we can focus on the human element. Or do you see the whole contingency model just completely going away, and then everyone moves to some sort of like software as a service, monthly type model?
So I think, firstly, the recruitment industry would benefit massively from being regulated. I think if there was some form of regulation and some form of standards that people had to work to and abide by, that would actually help everyone. That would help the clients, that would help the candidates, that would actually help recruiters. You would see a massive drop off. You would see people leave the industry in droves, which I think would be fucking brilliant, to be honest with you. If you get rid of the cowboys, you get rid of the chancers and the knobheads who, do ruin it for everyone, right? So I would, first of all, make people like sign up to this thing, and they'd have to do tests, and then before you can go and practice recruitment, you'd have to be accredited to do it. I think that would be the best step they could take. They'll never do it, but it would be the best thing for it to happen. In regards to AI, the way I see it is AI probably will influence our lives across everything we do everywhere, right? And it will be an integral part of what we do, and it will make life easier. I think for the next 5 years or so, whilst it's being refined, what it will do is it will take away a lot of the menial tasks, right? So I was trying to use an analogy to my team the other day. So, like, imagine we're chefs in a kitchen, right? At the moment, we're chopping every onion, we're chopping every carrot ourselves, and we're doing all that shit, and we're getting all the kind of prep together, and then we're adding our magic by kind of cooking it together and putting it all together and making it happen. I think AI is going to chop the onions, chop the peppers, and tell us kind of how to put it all together to make it taste really nice. But I think it's still going to require a human touch to taste and go, that's not quite right. It needs some more salt. It needs some more pepper. Like, you can never replace that. You can never replace the magic, like you say, of the human interaction and the kind of dealing with people. And we will see resistance from kind of the wider general public in terms of using AI. You see it now. People don't want to talk to fucking bots on websites. They don't want to talk to like someone who's going to give them generic stock answers. They don't want to talk to a fucking person on the phone going, tell me your problem after the beep. Like, they want to talk to a human being who can sort it out and make it happen. So I don't think actually there's ever going to be a time where everything is fully AI. We're just dealing with robots and stuff. It's nonsensical. It will never happen. What they will do is they'll create programs, they'll create software, they'll create processes which facilitate us to do our job a lot more efficiently. So yes, there'll be less recruiters. There'll be less good recruiters because a lot of people's job at the moment is glorified order takers and glorified kind of CV harvesters, which will be done by AI, which is fine, which is a completely different service to what a lot of people want or need. Most people need some form of consultation. When someone goes to market on a job, they need someone to say, guys, you're paying 10 grand under market value, or you're asking for someone to come to Central Oxford when getting there's a bloody nightmare. You need to do 2 days a week. I don't think AI is ever going to understand the nuances of the human brain and human nature. And because of that, it's not going to ever, I don't think, overtake us. It's just going to make life easier because we use ChatGPT. We use, can you tell me the 10 biggest e-commerce companies in Woking or whatever? Like, done, there it is. Rather than going through Google going, okay, there's that, and there's that. You're putting it in there and you've got it in 10 seconds. Bish Rush Bosh, can you give them decision makers' names? Easy peasy. And it will make life easier from that perspective. But I don't think there's ever going to be a time where you can then drag that decision maker's name into an email campaign and let it run through a sequence of like automated emails, which even when it says it's got hyper personalization or whatever, it just hasn't. And you can tell, like I can tell a mile off when I get emails which just are clearly like sequences, and I'm just like, oh, fuck off. Like, I would respect someone so much more if they just said, hi Will, I see you're a massive fan of The Office. Wasn't it funny when Finchy did this or whatever? Like, I would be like, oh my god, fucking sell to me, please. And I just don't think we'll ever get that automation. As clever as it gets, it's never going to be more complex than the human mind, which is unpredictable, which is scatty, which is changing on a daily basis because of its environment. So yeah, that's my thoughts really.
Yeah, it's it's a minefield, and we just don't know. One thing you touched on there is actually as well, just to sort of finish this off, because it's something I've been saying for quite a few years actually, is, and it's just from my perspective of trying to improve the industry. What do you think of maybe it's sort of what you were talking about then, but what do you think of some sort of actual qualification for, say, a 360 recruiter, like you said, where you have to actually go and there's some sort of standard course or something where you learn everything about business development, doing everything best practice, sourcing and everything. So it teaches you all the technical skills, but it also teaches you how to do it in an ethical way, like you said. And then we come back to regulation of. I personally think there's, though it would ruin a lot of people's businesses, and like you said, it would probably clear out 50% on day one. Is that a bad thing? I don't think so, but I don't know what the answer is, but I do feel like that's something that would really help, because then there would be some sort of standard. The amazing thing about recruitment is the fact that you can have no GCSEs, no education, come off of the street and be earning 100k within 5 years. Amazing. You can't really do that in any other industry, bar maybe acting or being a footballer or something. But that's also the worst thing about it, because then you do end up with loads of cowboys. People just set up recruitment businesses because they hear it's easy money, ruin the reputation, hire people. They have an awful experience with these people who have no idea what they're doing, and then drop out, and then the reputation goes down and down and down.
That's it, bud. Like, there's no barriers to entry, and you're right. It is amazing, but you can come into an industry and make a living very quickly, and not have any qualifications. But that really is more of a minority. Like, you look at people's CVs, like I reckon most people I know have had some form of flirtation with recruitment in their life. I know loads of people who have given it a shot, done 3 months, not for them, see you later. I genuinely think if we, an industry our size, which is what, like £45 billion a year or whatever, but it does make sense to have some form of regulation, because it's going to control costs slightly better. It's saying, oh, you're not allowed to charge more than this or whatnot. Removes the greed element, which removes the unethical decisions, because you're not making decisions based on how much money is going to go into your pocket. You're going to make decisions based on what's right by a person or a human being. You're not going to get clients spending ridiculous amounts of money on recruitment fees when actually they don't need to. They've just been taken advantage of, which means they can then invest more money in developing people in their team or doing whatever, or however they choose to do it. I just think it benefit the industry so much, just having some form of accepted gold standard. And don't get me wrong, the REC, do the certifications and whatnot, but let's be honest, it doesn't mean anything. No one really gives a shit. No one's going to choose one recruiter over another because they've got REC after their name, or Cert RP or whatever, because it's just an interpretation of best practice. It's not actually any form of regulation. So yeah.
Well, look, mate, we've covered a lot there. Where do you want people to go check your stuff out? What's your socials, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so go to our TikTok. That's the one we're trying to grow at the moment, and that's where we put most of our controversial stuff. We put a lot of stuff on TikTok. We don't put on LinkedIn because we don't want to get banned from LinkedIn. So I just don't give a shit if I get banned on TikTok. So head over to our TikTok, but also check out our LinkedIn as well for the slightly less controversial stuff. But yeah, just find us OX7 and
what's your TikTok?
It's OX7. It's just literally OX7 and the word 7. You got in there early, boy.
All right, mate. Well, nice one. Really appreciate you coming on, mate.
Thank you, mate.